Until 1943, this was the largest building in the United States. Not a factory, not a government headquarters, not a monument to industry or war. An asylum. A psychiatric hospital in Morris Plains, New Jersey, called Greystone, designed for 600 patients. By 1953, it held 7,674, and when they finally tore it down in 2015, a developer had offered to restore it for free. The state of New Jersey spent $34 million to destroy it instead. This is the story of how a building meant to heal became a warehouse of suffering. How the largest structure in America housed the country's forgotten. And how, even after demolition, the horrors never stopped. To understand how Greystone became what it did, you have to start with the woman who built it. Dorothea Dix was a nurse and mental health advocate in the mid-1800s. At the time, the mentally ill in America were treated like animals. They were chained in basements, locked in attics, thrown into jails alongside criminals. Some families kept their mentally ill relatives in cages in their own homes. Dix spent years traveling across the country documenting these horrors. She visited poorhouses and prisons, recording what she saw. And what she saw disgusted her. So she lobbied state legislatures to build proper facilities, places where the mentally ill could be treated with dignity. In New Jersey, she found a receptive audience. The state legislature appropriated $2.5 million to build a new asylum. That was an enormous sum in the 1870s. And they hired an architect named Thomas Story Kirkbride to design it. Kirkbride was a Philadelphia Quaker and psychiatrist who believed something revolutionary. He believed architecture itself could heal. His philosophy was called environmental determinism. It was the idea that patients could recover if they were placed in the right surroundings. Sunlight, fresh air, open spaces, dignity. The Kirkbride Plan called for linear buildings shaped like a bat wing, with each ward branching off from a central administration building. Every room would have natural light. Every patient would have access to outdoor space. No ward would hold more than 20 patients. The design was meant to prevent exactly what would later destroy it: overcrowding. Construction on the New Jersey State Lunatic Asylum at Morristown began in 1871. It took 5 years to complete. When the building was finished in 1876, it measured 673,706 square feet. That made it the largest building in the United States. Larger than any factory, larger than any government building, larger than anything constructed in America until the Pentagon was built during World War II. On August 17, 1876, the asylum opened its doors. The first 292 patients were transferred from Trenton State Hospital. The building was designed for 600. It seemed like more than enough room. It wasn't. Within 4 years, the patient population had already exceeded 800. By 1887, the exercise rooms and attics had been converted into dormitories. By 1914, there were 2,412 patients crammed into space, designed for 1,600. And by 1953, the number had reached 7,674 patients, nearly 13 times the original capacity. The very thing that made Greystone special became its curse. Its reputation for humane treatment attracted patients from across the state. Families who wanted the best for their loved ones sent them to the largest, most modern facility in America. And the building that was supposed to prevent overcrowding became the most overcrowded asylum in the country. But the overcrowding was just the beginning. Between 1929 and 1931, 3 devastating fires swept through Greystone. The worst came on November 26, 1930, when faulty electrical wiring on the 6th floor ignited the center section of the building. The north wards on the 4th floor were destroyed. The central tower collapsed. When they rebuilt it, the 4th floor never matched the rest of the building again. But what happened during the fires was even more disturbing. As flames consumed the building, staff evacuated thousands of patients into the cold November night. They had to move them away from the building quickly, and they also had to prevent them from escaping into the surrounding countryside. So they tied them to trees. Using firemen's ropes, staff bound patients to trees on the asylum grounds while the building burned behind them. Human beings, many already terrified and confused, roped to trees like livestock while their home went up in flames. The fires were just one chapter in Greystone's descent. By the 1940s, the hospital had embraced a new form of treatment that would define the era, the lobotomy. In 1947, Columbia University launched what they called the Columbia Greystone Lobotomy Project. It was one of the most comprehensive research studies on lobotomy ever conducted in America. Led by Dr. Fred Mettler and Dr. J. Lawrence Poole, the project brought neurosurgeons, psychiatrists, and psychologists to Greystone. They chose Greystone specifically because of its large patient population. There were plenty of subjects to experiment on. 48 patients were selected for the study. 24 would receive the surgery. 24 would serve as controls. The procedure they used was called a topectomy. Patients were laid on their backs and given sodium pentothal to sedate them. Then surgeons opened the skull, reflected a bone flap from the frontal region, and began removing brain tissue. For schizophrenia patients, they removed 30 to 35 grams of gray matter. For depression, 20 to 25 grams. For pain, 15 to 20 grams. These were not precise calculations. They were guesses, made while cutting into living human brains. The results were published in 1949, and they were damning. The Columbia Greystone Project failed to provide evidence of positive effects from the surgery. Patients who received lobotomies had higher rates of post-operative seizures than those who received standard procedures. The ethical debates sparked by the study contributed to the eventual decline of psychosurgery in America. But by then, thousands of patients across the country had already been lobotomized, including at least one at Greystone, whose story would become the subject of one of the greatest poems in American literature. Her name was Naomi Ginsberg. She was the mother of Allen Ginsberg, the beat poet who would later write Howl. Naomi was a Russian Jewish immigrant, a former schoolteacher, and a member of the Communist Party. She was also schizophrenic. Her delusions were severe. She believed the president had implanted listening devices in her home. She thought her mother-in-law was trying to kill her. She claimed doctors had put electrodes in her back. She complained of painful sensitivity to light. Multiple times throughout the 1940s and the 1950s, she was committed to Greystone. The treatments she received there were brutal: medication, insulin shock therapy, electroshock, and eventually a lobotomy. In 1948, Allen Ginsberg and his brother signed the consent form authorizing the surgery on their mother. He was 22 years old. The lobotomy did not cure Naomi. If anything, it made her worse. After the surgery, she became convinced that Allen himself was a spy. The operation, designed to calm her paranoia, only gave it a new target: her own son. Naomi died on June 9, 1956, at Pilgrim State Hospital. Allen was in Berkeley at the time. He missed the funeral. When he arrived back in New Jersey, he learned there had not been enough men present to recite the Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for the dead. 3 years later, Allen published his response. The poem Kaddish is a raw, devastating portrait of his mother's suffering. He wrote about her eyes of shock, her eyes of lobotomy. He described the hospitals that held her, the treatments that broke her, the guilt he carried for signing that consent form. What Allen never mentioned in the poem was discovered only in 1986, when researchers found the original consent documents in an archive. The line that haunts readers most comes near the end: "Oh mother, what have I left out?" Now he knew. Around the same time Naomi was suffering at Greystone, another famous patient arrived. His name was Woody Guthrie. By 1956, Woody Guthrie was already a legend. The folk singer and songwriter had written "This Land Is Your Land," a song so iconic it became an unofficial national anthem. His guitar bore the inscription, "This machine kills fascists." He had written over 3,000 songs. He had inspired a generation of musicians. But Woody was sick. He had Huntington's disease, a hereditary degenerative nerve disorder that his mother had also suffered from. The symptoms mimicked mental illness: loss of muscle control, erratic behavior. He appeared drunk or confused, even when sober. On May 29, 1956, Woody was arrested for wandering aimlessly on the highways. He was committed to Greystone, where doctors initially misdiagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. He was 43 years old. Woody lived in Ward 40, which he called Wardy 40. He called the hospital itself Greystone. At the time, Greystone held 8,500 patients on over 1,000 acres. Woody was just one more number in the largest asylum in America. But Woody had visitors. Pete Seeger came, Ramblin' Jack Elliott, Phil Oakes. On Sundays, a couple named Bob and Sidsel Gleason would take him to their home in East Orange for a few hours of freedom. And then, on January 29, 1961, a 19-year-old kid arrived at Greystone. He had dropped out of the University of Minnesota and hitchhiked across the country for one reason: to meet his hero. His name was Bob Dylan. Dylan visited Woody at Greystone and at the Gleason home multiple times over the following weeks. He became a Woody Guthrie jukebox, playing his hero's songs for the ailing legend who could no longer play them himself. Before Dylan left, Woody gave him a card. On it, he had written 4 words: "I ain't dead yet." Dylan went back to New York and wrote "Song" to Woody. The melody was borrowed from Guthrie's own 1913 Massacre. It was one of Dylan's first original compositions. The beginning of a career that would change American music. Woody was transferred to Brooklyn State Hospital later that year to be closer to his family. He died on October 3, 1967 at Creedmoor State Hospital in Queens. His ashes were sprinkled in the waters off Coney Island, the building where Dylan met his hero, the building where Naomi Ginsberg received her lobotomy, the building that was once the largest in America. It would stand for another 48 years. But the suffering inside never stopped. In 1974, a group of student psychologists resigned from Greystone and reported abuse to the Newark Star-Ledger. A grand jury investigation followed, examining 300 exhibits over 6 months. An undercover agent worked inside, gathering evidence. 5 people were indicted. 2 years later, in 1976, a class action lawsuit called Doe versus Klein was filed against the state. The charges were devastating. Patients had been deprived of a tolerable living environment. They had been denied protection from physical harm. The constitutional right to basic human decency had been violated. The result was unprecedented. A court-appointed oversight committee was created to monitor conditions at Greystone. Federal oversight would continue for 32 years until 2009. The state was ordered to build community homes and ensure adequate staffing. 20 independent living cottages were constructed by 1982. But the reforms never fully took hold. By the 1990s, Greystone was making headlines again. Patient escapes became commonplace. Some of those escaping were criminals and sex offenders. Staff were accused of abuse and rape. Female patients became pregnant. Sexual assault was reported in a hospital elevator. Patients committed suicide. A twice-convicted rapist escaped and disappeared. The buildings were falling apart. Basic comforts were lacking. The hospital came dangerously close to losing its accreditation from the Joint Commission. If that happened, Greystone would have lost $35 million annually in Medicaid and Medicare funding. A state Senate task force conducted a 6-month investigation. The hospital passed its accreditation review, but barely. In 2000, Governor Christine Todd Whitman's Oversight Committee issued a report so damning that she ordered the 550-bed facility closed within 3 years. A new hospital opened on the grounds in 2008. The old Kirkbride building, the largest structure in America until 1943, was abandoned. It sat empty for 7 years, while preservationists fought to save it. The Preserve Greystone Advocacy Group was formed. Drew University students attempted to get the building listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Over 4,000 signatures were gathered to halt demolition. Multiple developers offered to restore the building at no cost to the state. A company called Alma Realty said they would take on the entire project for free. Governor Chris Christie rejected every proposal. He dismissed the developer offers as too expensive or impractical. The state declined to list the building on historic registers, sidestepping protections that might have prevented its destruction. Christie later said it was not an easy decision because it was a historic structure, but he maintained it was the right decision. On April 6, 2015, demolition began. The state paid $34.4 million to North Star Contracting to tear down the building. By October, it was gone. 26 structures were demolished. 80 architectural elements were preserved, including 16 marble columns and some decorative moldings. That was all that remained of the largest building in American history until the Pentagon. The demolition was called one of the darkest moments in New Jersey architectural history. It sparked a nationwide preservation movement. Other states with abandoned Kirkbride buildings rallied around a new slogan, "Let's not let our building become another Greystone." But destroying the building did not destroy the problems. In 2018, the New Jersey Office of Public Defender sued the state over conditions at the new Greystone facility. The lawsuit described an atmosphere of terror. Violence was rampant. Almost every doctor had been assaulted. Some required hospitalization. Others required surgery. There was a mass exodus of physicians. Illegal drugs circulated inside the hospital, with staff suspected of involvement. Multiple patients died from overdoses. Others died from improper prescribing. One doctor suffered a heart attack and did not receive proper care. It was called a complete travesty. On December 31, 2019, a patient named Rashid Davis was found wandering the halls with blood on his hand. He had taken another patient into his room and murdered him with an X-Acto knife. Davis was found not guilty by reason of insanity. A lawsuit alleged that confusion in care orders had led to the death. More lawsuits followed in 2022 and 2024. Dr. Margarita Gorhams sued, alleging retaliation for reporting unsafe conditions. A whistleblower lawsuit claimed an official delayed an investigation while patients died. Disability rights. New Jersey challenged conditions across the entire state psychiatric system. The hospital was placed under court supervision again after a 2020 settlement. Now in 2026, the New Jersey Department of Health is commemorating the 150th anniversary of Greystone. Their official timeline celebrates the institution's founding. It mentions Dorothea Dix and the Kirkbride Plan. It describes a commitment to humane treatment. What it does not mention is the lawsuits, the demolition, the ongoing scandals, the murder. Former Governor Richard Cody put it simply, "If we forget that lesson, we risk repeating the same mistakes." They are celebrating the anniversary of a building they demolished, honoring the memory of an institution they could not fix, pretending the history is something to be proud of, while the replacement hospital sits under court supervision. Until 1943, the largest building in America was an asylum. It was designed by idealists who believed architecture could heal. It was built by a woman who spent her life fighting for the dignity of the mentally ill. It became a symbol of everything that went wrong with institutional care in America. Woody Guthrie called it Gravestone. Allen Ginsberg wrote one of the greatest poems in American literature about his mother's suffering inside its walls. Bob Dylan made a pilgrimage there to meet his dying hero. The building is gone now. The state paid $34 million to make sure of that. But the songs remain, the poems remain, and the problems remain. Some things are too big to save, but they are also too big to forget. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let us know in the comments, should the state have saved Greystone, or was demolition the right call? The debate is still going.